Chapter 3. The next day, Santa pulled me aside. "Still mad at me?" she asked. "Not really," I replied. "Good, because I took some money from my piggy bank so we can stop by the candy store and get milkshakes." "Sounds good to me," I said. "I can't stay long, though." "Me either," Santa replied. We walked over to the Jenkins candy shop in silence. I wasn't really mad at you. I was just mad, I told Santa as we climbed up on leather-covered bar stools and ordered 2 vanilla shakes. Santa looked embarrassed. My dad was pretty mad too, especially when Mom told him that some of the neighbors sent around a paper asking people to sign up saying they didn't want Negroes in our neighborhood. Mom told me that some of the neighbors were afraid of change. She admitted that was her first reaction too, but she understands now that we can't be afraid of change or judge someone else based on their differences from us. "We had the same talk at my house," I said. "My parents refused to sign that paper. I'd hate for the Dodgers to go back to an all-white team." "Yeah, Jackie brought so much excitement to Brooklyn," Sienna agreed. "True. Since Jackie's joined the Dodgers, 2 other teams have signed Negro players. Cleveland brought Larry Doby to the Indians. Hank Thompson plays for the St. Louis Browns. And now Mr. Ricky's talking about moving their top catcher prospect, Roy Campanella, up from the minors. Think he'll make it in time for opening day?" Sienna asked. "I sure hope so," I said. "Will you be there?" "I heard Dad tell my mother that he had to work," I muttered. "My father has opening day tickets taped to the refrigerator. It's all he talks about," Sienna said. "Is he taking you?" I asked. "Are you kidding? I'm the only one in the family who's a Yankees fan. Dad wouldn't waste his money taking me to a Dodgers game." I laughed. "Maybe I'll get to go when the Dodgers beat the Yankees in the World Series." "Keep dreaming," Sienna replied. We finished our milkshakes and raced each other to my front porch. Sienna won by foot. Embarrassed, I challenged her to do a do-over and beat her. I was glad we could put our fight behind us. Later, I was upstairs in my room finishing math homework when my father peeked in the doorway. "Hi, son," he greeted me. His face had a wide grin plastered across it as if he had a secret. "Hey, Dad," I called out, studying a man who usually wasn't so cheerful after work. "I have good news," Dad said, venturing inside my room. "You got us opening day tickets?" "No, Steven, I don't have opening day tickets," Dad replied. Maybe we really weren't going to the Dodgers opener, I thought. My father sat on the edge of my bed. "Sorry to disappoint you, but my news may cheer you up. You remember we talked about a black family buying 5224 Tilden Avenue?" "Yeah, I remember." "Well, the sale went through. The Palin family will move in soon." "What about the piece of paper and the neighbors not wanting a Negro family to move in?" "Turns out only a couple of people signed the petition," Dad explained. "Most of our neighbors feel as your mother and I do. The Palins should not have any trouble from the neighbors. They will be welcomed." "Is that the good news?" I asked. "Part of it," Dad replied. "The real estate agent who sold the house to the Palins is a customer of mine at the shoe store. He came in today and told me that the Palins have rented the top floor of their house to a player from the Dodgers." I jumped up from my desk chair and faced my father. "Are you kidding?" "I heard that players lived in regular Brooklyn neighborhoods, but I never dreamed I'd be so lucky to have one live near me." "Who is it, Dad?" "That's the thing," my father said. "My friend said he wasn't at liberty to share that information. I think they're waiting until the lease is signed. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see." I sighed. "Gee, Dad, do you think it's Pee-wee?" Dad stood up. "I don't know. Jackie?" "Steven, stop guessing. We'll know soon." I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed awake thinking about my new neighbors. I knew that when the baseball season was over, players usually returned to their home communities so they could work. At the start of season, they had to find a new place to rent closer to their teams. Some players shared rooms in private homes and walked to work at Ebbets Field, so it could be any of the players. At breakfast, I pressed Dad for more details. Since the Palins are Negroes, it makes sense that they'd rent to a black family. So it's either the Robinsons or maybe Roy Campanella. That's a possibility, but just because the Palins are Negroes doesn't mean their tenant will be black, Dad reminded me. "True, but you have to admit it's likely." I pressed. "The Dodgers have 40 players on their roster. It could be any of those men." "I bet you it's Jackie," I announced, jumping up from the table and dancing around the kitchen, shouting, "Jackie, Jackie, Jackie." "Sit down, Steven," Dad commanded. "You're getting ahead of yourself, and don't go to school bragging that Jackie Robinson is moving to Tilden Avenue." "Really? Dad, a Dodgers player 2 doors down? I don't care who it is," I said. "This is a dream." "Come true," he chuckled. "I understand, son. The next couple of weeks were absolute torture. In late March, a moving van pulled up in front of 5224. I ran out of the house without a jacket and plopped down on the top step. I watched as the Palin family's furniture was unloaded from the truck and hauled into the bottom floor. As evening set in, Mom called me inside for dinner. "The new family has moved in," I reported. "Yes, I saw the van." "Did you see any children?" "A boy and girl, but they look like teenagers," I told her. "Is that why you look so disappointed?" Mom asked. "I was hoping it was the baseball player's moving van. It shouldn't be much longer, Steve. I'm planning on cooking a pot roast and taking it over to Mrs. Palin tomorrow. Want to come over with me?" "Sure," I replied. "Think Mrs. Palin will tell us who's going to be living on the top floor?" "I don't know, Stephen, and you are not to bring it up. We're going over there to welcome the Palins to the neighborhood, not pry into their private business," Mom scolded. "But Mom," I groaned. "Whoever moves into 5224 obviously wants privacy. They have to deal with fans at the ballpark. They have to come home. They're family men, just like your dad. He'll want time for his family. You will have to respect that, Stephen. Am I clear?" "Yes, Mom. I won't be a pest. I promise." The next morning, we walked over to greet our new neighbors. It was cold, but I was sweating under my jacket. Would Mrs. Palin tell us who was renting her top floor? Would I be disappointed if it was an unknown player? Or would I get the best news of my life? Mrs. Palin opened the door on the first ring. "Good morning," Mom began. "My name is Sarah Satlow, and this is my son, Stephen. We are your neighbors. We wanted to welcome you to Tilden Avenue." "How lovely and unexpected," Mrs. Palin proclaimed. "It's nice to meet you both. My name is Eleanor Palin. Stephen, you'll see my children around the neighborhood. They're a bit older than you and go to Tilden High School. You must be at the elementary school, right?" "Yes, Mrs. Palin," I replied politely. "We know how chaotic it is to move, so I baked a pot roast for you and your family," Mom said, handing Mrs. Palin a covered pan, still warm, along with brownies wrapped in wax paper. "It smells divine," Mrs. Palin said. "Thank you." Sweat dripped down my neck. Should I risk making my mother angry by asking Mrs. Palin about the future tenant, or should I keep quiet? "Are you a Brooklyn Dodgers fan, Stephen?" Mrs. Palin asked. "I'm a big fan," I replied, relieved that she brought up the subject. "Who are your favorite players?" "Jackie and Pee-wee are my top two, but I also like Ralph Branca and Carl Erskine." "Why?" "Just curious," Miss Palin replied, with a twinkle in her eye. But I started to push, then looked up at my mom and shut my mouth. "I know there's a rumor that one of the Dodgers is moving in upstairs," Mrs. Palin said. I nodded. "Well, Stephen, my husband made me promise not to tell anyone who our tenant is going to be, so we'll all just have to wait and see who moves in," Mrs. Palin said with a warm smile. I almost fell to the ground and screamed out in frustration. Not another person telling me to wait. No, I couldn't stand it. I barely heard my mother say goodbye. Tears in my eyes, I followed her back to our house. I trudged up the stairs, feeling mad. Why didn't she tell us? "For all those reasons we discussed earlier," Mom said. "I still think it's Jackie." That night, I was sitting on the front stoop when Dad came home from work. He saw me staring down the block at our new neighbor's house. "Your mother told me you met the Palins today." "Yes," I nodded. "I've been debating about when was the right time to tell you this," Dad said. "Tell me what?" "I know now who is renting from the Palins," he said. "Who is it, Dad? You've got to tell me, please," I begged. "Until they move in, we won't know for sure," Dad teased. "Is it who I've been wishing for?" Dad chuckled. "I think you'll be very happy," he said. "Dad, are you telling me that Jackie Robinson is going to be my neighbor?" He beamed. "I saw Mrs. Palin today. He told me that Jackie and his family have signed the lease for Mr. Palin today. He told me that Jackie and his family have signed the lease for April 1st. I couldn't believe it. Jackie Robinson. I jumped into Dad's arms, yelling with joy, but Dad's laughter worried me. It was almost April 1st, and he loved a good April Fool's joke. I pulled away from him. "Are you making up a story?" "I wouldn't do that to you, son." "Is it really true, Dad?" "It's true, son. Mr. Palin said that Mrs. Robinson is driving their Cadillac across country with her brother Raymond and little Jackie Jr. They're expected in New York sometime between April 5th and 7th. "What about Jackie?" "He's still barnstorming with the team, Steve." "Oh, yeah, that's right. Is Jackie Jr. my age?" I asked. "I think he's younger than you." "You'll know soon," Dad replied. "I bet they'll be here tomorrow." "Can I stay home from school?" "I'm not even going to respond to that question, Steve." I laughed it off. "All right, Dad, but will you come get me out of school the minute the moving van pulls up?" No, my dad said. I'll be at work and you'll be at school. You've got to give the Robinsons privacy, Steve. Promise me you won't drive Mrs. Robinson crazy with questions about Jackie. I slid down the step below my dad. I honestly didn't know how I'd react to Jackie Robinson living so close to me. It was just too important. None of my friends would even believe me until Jackie actually moved in. I looked up at my dad and shrugged my shoulders. I'll try not to be a pest, I promised. I jumped off the stoop. Time me, I insisted before racing to Jackie's new home and back. How long did that take, Dad? 30 seconds tops, Dad said. I think I'll be living that close to a Brooklyn Dodgers player, I shouted. Every day after school, Sienna and I would race home, hoping to find a moving van parked outside of 5224 Tilden Avenue. Wednesday, April 7th, I got my wish. We broke into a trot, reaching the truck just as two men lifted an off-white couch from the back of the van. My heart pounded so hard I was sure the men would see it beating under my coat. I wanted so badly to peek inside the house, but Sienna wouldn't let go of my hand. Instead, we stood back and watched for a glimpse of the Robinson family. We stood out there for what felt like forever without seeing anyone. Finally, Sienna had to get back home. I knew my mom wouldn't want me to be out there trying to see the Robinsons, so I headed home too. This wait was driving me crazy. I kicked a small stone in frustration as I walked toward the stoop. There's a moving truck outside the Robinsons, I reported as soon as I got inside it. Shut. And Mom shut the door. I know, honey. We sat in the kitchen snacking on crisp carrots and apple juice. I was antsy to get back outside and continue looking for our neighbors. Can I ride my bike? You promised your father that you wouldn't pester the Robinsons, Mom reminded me. I just want to make sure it's thin. That's all, I protested. Move-in day is stressful. Give them space. Saturday, we can pick cherry blossoms and bring them over to Mr. and Mrs. Robinson. How does that sound? Fine, I muttered. I'll just sit on the stoop. You may not leave the yard, my mother told me. I won't. I sat on the top step until the workmen brought the last piece of furniture into the house. I spotted Mrs. Robinson and her son once, but there was no sign of Jackie. I was being cool and staying at a safe distance from the Robinson house, but I couldn't guarantee how I'd react when Jackie appeared. My stomach was in knots. I almost cried when the moving van pulled away from the curb and my mom called me inside. Saturday morning, I was up before sunrise. I opened my bedroom window and stuck my head out. I stayed there until Mom pulled me back inside. Steven, she scolded, how many times do I have to tell you not to lean out of the window? Ma, I was just looking for Jackie. Get dressed. After breakfast, we'll pick some cherry blossoms from the tree in our front yard and take them over to the Robinson house. I jumped into my mother's arms, kissing her generously on both cheeks. She hugged me tight. Thank you, Mom. Chuckling, my mother reminded me that Jackie might still be traveling. Try not to show your disappointment, Steve. I looked up at her, wondering how to pull that off.